McKeown and I work for Sailortown Regeneration. Sailortown is basically this area, the docks area, Belfast, inner city. It was the first urban village in Belfast going back hundreds of years, where the people from here would have worked on the docks, loading and unloading ships, and also a lot of them were merchant seamen who basically sailed all over the world. There would have been, this area was, you can see the tracks here along the street where the trains brought freight and deliveries down to the docks. But this anyway is St. Joseph's Church. St. Joseph's Church is the heart of the community. It was built in 1880 to replace an old shed. There was about 5,000 people living down here, and the church was built at that stage because there was a growing Catholic population. We also have Sinclair Presbyterian, which is further on down the other side of the docks. So anyway, St. Joseph's Church is a grade B plus listed building. It has fallen into disrepair for, I'd say maybe over the last 20 years. What happened in Sailortown was that in the late 60s, early 70s, it was the tail end of the Marshall Plan after the Second World War, where people were restructuring, regenerating, building new roads, trains were taken away, the new future was lorries, basically cars, all that. So they built a big motorway across there, the M2, the M3, and all the houses which were in Sailortown, I'll show you a map later on, but all the houses in the small streets in Sailortown were all knocked down. Then the people were, at the same time, they were building big housing estates, big tower blocks. This happened in a lot of cities. It happened in Glasgow, it happened in Liverpool, it happened in Manchester, it happened in Dublin. But in Belfast anyway, they built big housing estates all around the city, and people were moved out there. So people who were living down here, there were a range of different housing. There was some very nice housing, which we call the captain's houses, which were big 3-story houses, Georgian. And then there were other small houses, which we would say 2 up, 2 down. These were only 1 up, 1 downs. So some of the people who lived here were actually quite glad to move, because they were going to a house which had an inside toilet and possibly some form of heating in it, with a garden and fresh air. Now, what they came to realise really was that when they moved out there, they hadn't realised that when they moved there, they were moved nearly to an isolated place. When they were in Sailortown, their mommy, particularly in terms of the women, their mommy, their auntie, their sisters, their cousins, their school friends were all living in the same area. If you needed to nip down to the shop, your next door neighbour would keep an eye on your kids for you. So that whole sense of community disappeared. So that was in the 70s. We roll on then to about, 1999. The congregation for St. Joseph's had dwindled very badly. There was hardly anybody left living around here. The bishop decided in his wisdom that he would close St. Joseph's. This was been St. Joseph's parish. He decided that he would close St. Joseph's because it was no longer financially viable to keep it open, and he gave the reason as basically dropping congregation. There was a huge outcry about this, because the people who had been moved 30 years earlier and their families were absolutely devastated that the last remnant of their kind of history and heritage in Sailortown was to be taken away from them. So they came down here in their droves. They protested vociferously for a period of 2 years, outside the church, inside the church. But finally in 2001, the bishop decided that he would have his last mass. He would basically, and everybody would move. They would now become part of a new parish called St. Patrick's Parish, which is down in Donegal Street, a very ornate church down there. So when he had his last mass, the people basically protested vociferously again. They staged a walkout during the mass. They called him all the names of the day. They called him, I wouldn't even repeat what they called him, and this was in a holy place, and these were good Catholic people. So he can show you the strength of feeling. So they walked out, but he was adamant, so he locked the door behind them. They then broke in. They broke in through the door. He had turned the electric off, and they basically lit it up with loads of candles, and they slept in it for 3 nights and 3 days. I'll show you some photographs when we get inside. So basically, I'll tell you a wee bit more about that when we get inside anyway. So we have been working on a programme of regeneration. We managed to get the lease from the bishop in 2006. There was a series of protracted negotiations with the bishop. He finally handed over a lease, and we now have the church on a 150-year lease. But the problem was in the meantime that there'd be no maintenance done in the church. There had been no upkeep. Basically, bits started to fall off. There were huge holes in the roof, and it became a liability, really. Now we have begun to kind of bring it back to life, and some of these photographs here tell you the stories of, like I said, all the people who lived down here. So if you look at this photograph here, this was the church in its heyday, and you can see here the bishop up here in his pulpit. You can see, excuse me, there's a big white marble altar there. You can see the statue of Our Lady down here. But if you actually look at the amount of children, this is from a first communion in about the late 50s, early 60s, and you see all those children there. Those are all children who would have been 7 in that year. And if you multiply each one of those children by about, maybe it could be a family could be anything from 4 actually to 16 in this family. So you can imagine the amount of families who lived in this area, and that was taken from the balcony of the church. So it just gives you a reflection of the amount of people who lived here and why it mattered so much to them. So if you look at this photograph here, this is Sonny Liston, who was a very famous boxer in America. And the story is that he had, I think, mafia connections in some way. A man there called McAllister, who was a merchant seaman. He was over in, I think it was Chicago, and he met him somewhere. He was into boxing as well, so he met him. And he said to him, why don't you call over and see us in Belfast? So Sonny Liston, at the height of his fame, came to Belfast, came down, and I had roofers up in the church there maybe about less than a year ago, and they came down to have a cup of tea, and one of them said to me, there's me in that photograph. So I says to him, where are you? So he pointed himself out, that's him there. And I said, well, who are those 2 women sitting in Sonny Liston's knee? And he said, those are my 2 sisters. And I said, well, who's that man there who looks like he's like a mafia figure or something? He says, that's my dad. And then he says, there's his mummies in here. So there's 16 in his family. So that's all his family, all gathered around Sonny Liston. And these here, he was able to point these out to Shawnee Baker, one of our main volunteers, James E. Farley. So all of these people are from Sailortown, and anybody who comes down here is from Sailortown can immediately pick them out. So these are some of the pictures really from the statue, just we have the May procession. I'll tell you a wee bit more about that later on. So this photograph here shows you basically, you can see the men there in the raft. So you can see how close that was, how close the actual water was, the lock was to the front of the church. The land around here has all been reclaimed. It's been moved further and further back. So the church is now set quite far back. This is part of the protest I told you about. You can see again the statue, which means so much to people from Sailortown. This was Father Des, who came down, who said mass on the steps of the church for years and years. He even christened a baby on the steps of the church. He was one of the few Catholic priests who supported the people from down here. And you can see the big banner up here, St. Joseph's Not For Sale, because basically the bishop wanted to sell it. This photograph here is our chairperson, Paddy Benson. Paddy's been chair of he was the one basically who negotiated with the bishop to get the lease. This is his wife, Mamie, obviously. This is Mamie's daddy. He's a jazz musician, and this is his jazz band. They played in, if you've ever heard of Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, they were regulars over there. We have film footage of Mamie's daddy and his band playing in films from the 70s. They were very, very well renowned. Very well-known jazz musicians. This man here, a couple of them are still alive. This picture's from 52 years ago. This man here is Gay McIntyre, who is in his 80s now and is still playing a regular gig in Derry once a week. He's really well renowned down there. So we're really proud of this photograph. I think it incorporates a lot. It incorporates the past. It incorporates the kind of, the enjoyment of people, out for a day out. The story with this photograph is that the people who were playing in this had taken the day off work, but basically on the slide they all said they were sick. So the picture was printed in the Irish News, and it was great consternation, kind of going, oh my God, we'll get reported and everything else, Obviously their musicians was only a part-time job. They had another way of earning money. These again are some of our other, as people in the past, they didn't have photographs, they didn't have cameras. And so you really only had your photograph taken on important occasions, like weddings and christenings possibly, and then those studios. So this is Marie and Geordie O'Hara. Their son is now a Green Party councillor who's been very supportive of us. And so you see the photographs on the back. Again, here's the statue of the Virgin Mary. This was, they carry that statue around the docks every May. May is the month of Our Lady. They deck the statue with flowers, put it on a homemade kind of beer thing, you would call it, like a wooden structure. And then they carry it out from the church right into the docks, all around the docks, and Father Des, the priest, comes with them, and they pray for all their families who have been lost at sea, the families who have gone. They pray for the people who are on sailors who are at sea now, and then they come back to the church. They set the statue there. They have a little band that accompanies them, which comes down from the glens of Antrim. It's actually quite sad. And then basically they, the women all jump on and grab all the flowers and take them home. But it was started by, if you look at this photograph, it was started by a group of sailors from Goa. So the Goanese sailors came over, and this was a tradition in their home country, where they, in the month of May, they carried the statue of Our Lady around. We see it in a lot of European cities. Their ship was broken down here. It was here for a number of months. It happened to be May, so they wanted to do this. And then the local school teacher got involved, and it became a regular occurrence here. It had stopped for a while, but basically as part of the protest to keep the church open, the people of Sailortown started it back up again, and they still do that every year. Okay, this is Pat's Bar. Pat's Bar and the Rotterdam, which I'll show you in a minute. Pat's Bar was a bar which was very, very popular among local people. It did a kind of traditional music, folk music in that. So it had a fire in it, had all those. It's now been closed for about 10 years. But we can walk on round into Barrow Square here. I'll show you the two bars together. Right. So, this is the Rotterdam here, and Pat's Bar there. I mean, you can see by the holes in the roof in the Rotterdam bar, pigeons flying in and out of it. And you can see here all the stuff grown up over the. So those two bars have been closed now, I would think maybe 10, 12 years. And again, there were various attempts to keep them open, keep them going, but again, with not so many people coming down here. Now, currently, as regards development down here, there is a pre-planning application in for these two bars to be knocked down and a 30-storey rental apartment block to be built here. You can see the one behind here, which in itself is absolutely huge and completely out of context with the historic nature of the area. But the new one will be about nearly 3 times the size of that, 2.5 times the size of it anyway. Well, I mean, it's not to say that it's going to go ahead because it's only pre-planning at the minute, and we have about 300 people ready to object whenever it does go into planning. But it just shows you the way the development context for down here. We are looked on very much, Sailortown is looked on very much as an empty area. Developers will look at this and they will go, it's just empty space. There's so many car parks there, there's empty buildings, and nobody really lives there. So basically, they're just kind of thinking this is prime area for development for building these kind of, I'll show you more office towers when you go down here. But our point is really that that community was from here, is still here, maybe not so much in the immediate area, but they still have a connection to the area. They still feel very strongly about the area. And there actually is a community living here now because we have, again, the people who are living in these private apartments. These are all bought apartments. We also have the social housing further on up, which Sailortown Regeneration is instrumental in getting down here. Because the whole thing about the Sailortown people is that they want a community back down here again. They want Sailortown back as a living, breathing community, not just a series of office blocks and towers and fancy, fancy restaurants or whatever. So you can see this square here is part of the whole development area. So you can see seemingly these tiles here cost an absolute bomb. You can see some of them cracked. Anyway, there's been a whole lot of discussions around whether we can hold events down here or not. We've managed to have 2 kind of smallish events down here. But I mean, you can see with the expanse of the area, all the way around there, and particularly on a day like this, it is just ideally, it's basically made for events, it's made for music events, it's made for farmers markets, but it doesn't belong to us, it doesn't even belong to the public, it belongs to the Harbour Commissioners. And it is very, very difficult to get them to give us permission to have things down here. One of the issues they raised, this is why I mentioned these tiles, we're not allowed to put anything heavy on these tiles in case they're broken. So there was at one stage back whenever Pat's Bar in the Rotterdam were still going, the two bars clubbed together and they began to run open air music gigs down here. But a local resident objected to the noise, so City Council stepped in and stopped it, and really that was the death knell for the two bars. So I mean, there were loads and loads of people coming down here. It was beginning to take off, some quite big names down here, but basically that all died a death. And part of that maybe was due to maybe part of it was due to the recession as well. You know, that the property boom had basically collapsed. A lot of people who had bought apartments in this here were in what you would call negative equity, and basically that whole period really, everything crashed. There weren't many jobs about, everything died. We're hoping with things began to pick up again, some of these apartments are beginning to sell again, and we're hoping really that it will drive forward kind of a people-led regeneration of the area. I'll just show you when we get down here exactly what the developers are doing, but basically this space would be fantastic for families. You can already see people cycling and walking through here, but there's nothing organised, there's nothing structured, and we would really like to see a lot more of that happening in this area. So you can start to see now all the different office blocks all around here. And if you want maybe have a quick look across the river, this is all harbour land. This is all once you get past those gates, we just walked into Barrow Square. This is all the harbour estate. So the harbour are basically in charge of the port of Belfast. They've been going about 400 years. They have a very, very fancy Grade A building further on down, but they basically have lots and lots and lots of money. I think they made 38 million last year, and that was just 1 year. So that's a very conservative estimate of the money, the turnover that they have. But so you're coming down now towards the river, and you'll see the very famous Harland and Wolff cranes down here. So this gives you an idea of the other side of the river and Belfast. So if you want to look down that way, you can see there's a boat moored in there at the minute, and then you'll see the two big cruise ships. Obviously with COVID at the minute, there's no cruise ships, but these I think are in for repair in the shipyards. You'll see the very famous Titanic Museum down there, and then you'll see the Titanic Hotel, that red brick building just beside it, and then the two cranes, Samson and Goliath. I think they wanted to call them Samson and Delilah, but the evangelical people didn't really like the idea that a crane would be named after a woman, so they're called Samson and Goliath. And then you'll see all these brand new apartment blocks, and the Odyssey just across the river. And if you look down this way, you can see the bridge, the traffic going across it, and that bridge, you can see how close actually we are to the town. That's the Oval Tower, which is 28 stories high. And the building that I mentioned earlier, the 30-storey, it's two stories higher is what we're looking to put down, and we're actually calling it Travesty Tower at the moment. So you can basically, it's about, I'd say maybe 4 to 5 minutes walk to the Big Fish at Donegal Quay, and you're actually right in the heart of Belfast right there. You can see how close we are. So you see all these there's more office buildings going up down here. They all belong to the harbour. The harbour have moved very much into property rental. Built a new hotel down there. The building down there, which has kind of a bit sticking out the front there with the pillars on it, that's a Marriott hotel. So the idea really is, which way you go? So the idea is that they own it, they lease it out, they take in very high-ranking tenants, like they have big international finance companies, insurance companies, lawyers firms. UTV are actually based down here now. If you ever watch UTV News, you see the beautiful views at the back. It's all basically they're sitting overlooking this view. So it's another source of income for the harbour. We would hope, as part of our revitalisation of Sailortown, to tap into some of those tenants who will be, some of the staff really, who will be working down here, and get them to come along to St Joseph's, partake in lunchtime activities. I don't know, we could have music events and that. Again, maybe possibly use Barrow Square down there for maybe a monthly event, tie into the bars, creating really more social space, because everything down here, if you look at a lot of regenerated docklands around the world, they're very soulless. They have big office blocks, they have big hotels, but what else goes on? There's nothing. You need that dynamic of people, which is what Sailortown had in abundance before they were moved out. But those people from Sailortown still come down here. They still have a very kind of Belfast individual kind of, bit of crack and that stuff. And that is what is missing from down here, and that's what we want to bring back again. So we go back over now and we'll go into the heart of Clarendon Quay, and there's some historic buildings down there. We can see this is a Saturday morning, like at a weekend, and you would think that this would be jiving with people, but all you get really are cyclists and walkers out for a bit of fresh air. But there isn't really any for them to go to, I don't know, get a cup of coffee, maybe nip into a wee shop. We really would like to have more those small independent businesses down here, which would sell things, not big upmarket, but and basically keep. You need a local economy. So you need local shops, local bars, local cafes, and something that reflects the unique character of Belfast and of Sailortown, of that dockland life. I always think that Sailortown incorporates that kind of living heart of Belfast. Yeah. People in it, particularly. So you see this here. This is what you would call a graving dock. You can see the expanse of water there. I think this has been lying here for years and years. If you go over to South Belfast, you can see a lot of people out on the river in rafts, boats, canoes and that. I think this would make an ideal place to teach water safety. It would make some kind of there was one stage a woman from the council said to us, it could be turned into an outdoor swimming pool. Now, I love outdoor swimming, so I thought I was well up for that. And then she said, you could put 2 giant taps up there, and you could call it the Belfast Sink. Belfast Sink is a local kind of specialised type of sink, which you see in old houses. And she said, that's a fantastic idea. But again, these are all ideas. But, we don't have the money, we don't have the influence. Really, all we can do is lobby people to try and get them to see the sense of what we're saying. I'm thinking, for the local kids, it would be fantastic for them to be able to come down here and to learn about rafting and learn about the water, particularly because they've been banned on coming into the harbour estate because they tend to go down to the river and there's some ladders there, and kids being kids, they kind of climb and they tend, so they have been basically banned out of here. A local community policewoman did take them away one time and brought them to do water safety and road safety actually. But we would like if that was to be done here, and then other kids from other areas and other schools could come down, and it's recreational opportunities really. So just walk on over this way. Again, it always strikes me how dead it is here, how quiet it is. And it's probably as well part of it, even during the week now, because of lockdown. So, all that emphasis on getting high-paying office tenants and getting tourists, that's all died a death, and we don't know it'll ever come back again. So maybe, in the circumstances that are now, we may need to focus more on local tourism, local people coming here, outdoor activity. So we're hoping really that the emphasis maybe is more on the local rather than international, which is what the Titanic Museum and places like that are good at. All the cruise ships, the bus tours, and who knows when they're ever coming back. So you can see, if you just look around here, you can see the extent of this. So if you look up here, that is the lock gate there. That hasn't been opened in, I couldn't tell you how long, years and years and years. But basically, this one here, and then you have 2 dry docks over there. So what this was basically, It's an old dock, originally long before the shipyards. So the boats came in here for repair. So they come in through that gate in here into what this was called the wet dock. They come in here and then they basically, those gates over there, they went through those gates there into the dry dock. At that stage it would be full of water. Then the water was all brought out and then the ship was left high and dry. And then they were able to do repairs to the ship. So there's 2 of those graving docks over there. But again, very little has been done with them. They're just sitting here. You can see the nice big pump house over there, which was used to pump the water out of the graving dock so they could do the repairs. And there has been some work done to that, but as far as I know, there's nobody in there. Now that would make a fantastic, I don't know, cafe, Airbnb, whatever. But again, it's been very sympathetically restored, again, by the harbour, because they have lots and lots of money. But really, it's just sitting there. But I think, we can walk over there in a minute and I'll show you. But I think those 2 dry docks would make fantastic performance spaces. You know, like in the old Roman Colosseums, where you have that steps going up and a performance down at the bottom, where there was a music, where there was a play, where people could come and enjoy it. Well, again, it's so just I wanted to say quickly, there was regeneration initiative here from about maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and it was called the Lagan Development, and it was all about regenerating the side of the river. And one of the things they had considered doing was putting a marina in here. So they did a lot of work at that time. That's where a lot of the the public realm comes from. I think they spent maybe something like £50,000 on fixing those lock gates. But whatever way happened, there was some engineering problem and it never worked properly. So then the recession hit, the big property boom, all prices went haywire, people ran away again, and then everything came to a halt. When it started up again, it started on that side of the river. So you'll see now the yacht marina. If you look across there, you'll see all these boats sitting there. They were originally supposed to be here, but basically the Titanic, the foundation of the Titanic regeneration project, Len was now leading on all the development down here, and again it's all the other side of the river. The harbour leads on it on this side, but they're looking at putting in big tower blocks, squeezing as many people and as many tenants into as small a space as possible in order to maximise profit. So really, there's for community, for ordinary people, for the ordinary people of Belfast, really, there's very little in terms of regeneration, except what we're doing in St Joseph's and trying to bring life back to it. So, over here, Rita. See here, do you see the mussel shells there? That's the seagulls. The seagulls, there's lots of mussels here, so the seagulls basically lift them and then they fly over and drop them and that breaks them, so you'll see loads of those as you walk along. We're not very fond of seagulls, but so you'll see over here, this is a new office building, and then you see the big crane there. That's what just the centre shaft of it at the minute. It will be about twice the height of the one beside it, and again that's all high-end office rental for high-income tenants. Again, it's part of the harbour, and you see the one with the bits of blue on it just behind. That's a new car park. If you're driving across the bridge there, the M3, you'll see basically that now blocks your whole view of the river itself, and it is a car park basically. Belonging to the harbour. I don't think it's that much use because people in Belfast are very reluctant to pay the high cost of parking their cars. But basically, you can just see everything is geared towards maximising your profit. So everything is geared towards commuting. Everything is geared towards people coming into Belfast to work, whether it's flying or driving. Excuse me, or coming in doing their work and then leaving again. That's why the place is just dead after 5 o'clock. It could be lovely, this space.
It is beautiful.
And then this is now the dry dock. There's 2 of these. So if you just look in there, the Titanic make a big deal out of their Thompson dock and all their graven docks on the far side of the river. But I mean, look at this, and it's just lying there. It's full of water and rubbish, and you know. I mean, this is like something you'd see in, I don't know, London or Paris or something. Okay, we don't have the weather because there's the rain coming on again. You know, and you can see again there has been some development done, like, you know, this art sculpture here, which is called the Divide, and it represents the people who built the ships, the people who would have worked in the Harlot and Wolf shipyards, and they basically, that's the dividers that would have used, you know, for measurements and that. And there's various features like that, but it's all very small. So, and I said earlier about the lockdown, I mean, like I say, it's completely dead, and we would hope possibly that the emphasis there has been on building all these big tower blocks, like, I mean, take a look at that one there now. I mean, that's only the inside shaft of it. But if you get all these tenants in here, people squeezed into the offices with air conditioning, you know, people are going to be working from home from now on. So there'll be more emphasis on digital technology, and basically, hopefully that will cut down the amount of people commuting in and out, even if it doesn't by half, you know. So all this space will go to waste. So why not be more creative about it? Why not again focus more on, you know, on the recreational outdoor activities? Build some tents, get a social enterprise making umbrellas, put up wind shields. You see here, this is one of the old streets. In Sailortown, the majority of Sailortown is out there, just where that motorway is. You can see a map of it, basically what it used to look like and what it looks like now. That would have been a street really, one of the main strip thoroughfare. Walk down here, and this is just basically all this land here was once houses, one streets where a whole community lived, and that's all gone, and it's been replaced by all these car parks. Basically, and you can see, I mean, at weekends they're empty, you know. So walking back here, you can see it's quite a long street. This would have been the central spine for Sailortown. Now it's just like, I don't know what it's like. It's just derelict, really, isn't it?
Soulless.
But the potential for something to happen. I mean, this land here all belongs to government departments, like Department of Finance, Department of the Environment, Department of the Communities. And we would really like to see our houses being built back in there again. The Harbour Estate, like I say, is on this side. Basically, Corporation Street is, yeah, that's a new, I can't remember what's going in there, but it's some kind of a new office block or apartment block or something. I forgot to mention, actually, you'll see all the new student blocks going in just over there. So there's a huge amount of students coming in here with the new university coming in, and again, that's focused on students who are really, I mean, we love having students coming, and hopefully we'll have more restaurants and all that kind of thing, shops. But students don't stay that long. They're here for a couple of years and away again. Really, it's families that you need to make the investment. There's another small street. See that gate? That's another street belonging to Sailortown. And you can see that the remnants, if you have a bird's eye view from that, I'm trying to get somebody up with a drone at the minute. Underneath all those weeds, you can actually still see the outline of the it's called an American grid system. You see the outline of where the streets were and where the houses were. All of these streets and lanes and, you know, bars and shoemakers and everything, you know. So we'll just let that man walk past. And again, there's another way straight across there. On the city side and the far side. And you can just see the top, move over this way a bit. The top of those two tower blocks. There are called 7 towers at the bottom of the new lodge. When the people from Sailortown were moved out of here, a lot of them were moved in close. We actually have a song which was written by a musician from Sailortown, and he wrote the song, and it's about I'm living in a high rise far, far from the sea. You know, it's very evocative about basically living down in the docks and that sense of life, and then all of a sudden being on top of a high rise block, or even in a small house in a big housing estate. It's not the same. So you can see Again, we're in Dublin. So much cars coming up this road. That's on a Saturday afternoon. So now I'm just outside of the harbour gate. You can see the Graven Dock around Belfast. As far as we know, what's going to happen here is that there are plans in to build apartments along this side of the harbour estate, what I would call yuppie flats. So what we would like to see is some kind of public housing built on this side for families and a mixed tenure. There's another wee street in Sailortown there.
Should it make a documentary called The Empty Streets of Sailortown?
I mean, we're working with Mark Hackett at the moment, who is an architect, and he's talking about maybe widening the footpaths here, we're reclaiming these streets here, putting in planters. That's only short term. That is Trafalgar Street. So these ships were clearly called after seafaring maritime destinations. So the Battle of Trafalgar, then you had Ship Street, you had Dock Street, you had Little Ship Street, you had, I don't know, there's loads of different, but if you look at the map again, I'll show you they're all Nelson Street after, you know, the famous Admiral Nelson and all that. But, you know, there's potential there for that to be redone again. There's another car park in there. You can see this, there's another, see that car park there? Again, that belongs to the harbour, and it belongs to those flats there are Ireland permits. And look at the extent of the harbour they built there. And there's nothing there. You know, take these gates down and do something. Open them up, let our kids come in and play. I find that a lot in Belfast in general, but also in the harbour. We're very fond of throwing up fences and gates, you know, and it's because people are so afraid of antisocial behaviour, and maybe it's a legacy of the conflict or whatever. But it's resulted in wire fences everywhere, and it makes you feel like you're living in you know, well, there's gated communities as well, which are starting to come in. And it makes you feel you're living in a place where you're good when you start taking the walls down, taking the fences down. Okay, you might have a bit of antisocial behaviour, but the more people you have, the less likely it will. Here's another example here. It's actually open, it's usually closed. So this is what's called McCready's Yard. McCready's was like a rope maker, a chain maker. So one of those old businesses which focused on supplied the ships. So the man, Mr. McCready himself, he retired about 4 years ago. Just walk in, seems the gates open. I don't know, the gate shouldn't be open. So, see the weeds starting to grow up in the cracks? But I mean, this here is like, okay, it's industrial. This obviously is an original building here. But Mr. McCready was in here, and no matter you wanted to do with ropes or chains or whatever, he could get it. Builders from all around the place used to come here because he had a lifetime of knowledge about how to make things. And he had the machinery to do it. What he couldn't do, he'd make up. So, it's now, again, this building belongs, this whole area belongs to the harbour. But I mean, there's potential for them. It's up for rent at the minute. The only people, as far as I know, who could in here have been the Opera, Northern Ireland Opera Company, who were putting on a production of Die Fledermaus in the Opera House. But the Opera House is very pushed for space, so the harbour lent them this. I don't know if they paid anything or not, but they lent them this under their corporate and social responsibility thing. They come down here, so they had all their costume makers in there, the performance space here. They had all their prop making in there. So they were able to use this kind of rounded space for the rehearsals. And I basically dropped in one day. I actually tweeted at them and I said something about being in Sailortown. I said, welcome to Sailortown. Is why don't you call in for a cup of tea and bring a bag of sugar while you're coming? So they turned up and we came in, and then we're working with a group of local artists at the minute. So then they said the kids could come in to watch the rehearsals in here, and then they took the kids down to watch one of their dress rehearsals in the Opera House. And the kids loved it. They'd never been in the Opera House. They had never been seen opera singing, the whole costume making, and there's one of them in particular, a wee lad, and he still maintains email contact with them. So those are the wee things, that basically give people hope. Those are things that will stay with those children when they get older, which they would never experienced only for that. And so there is potential for that. So we're actually talking at the minute about, I said about Mark earlier. Mark is looking at the potential of community asset transfer. Now that can be done either on, like buying a building, or it can be done on a long-term lease. This to me would be a fantastic artist space, artist studios. Mark's talking about making a fantastic kind of maybe a tree plant nursery. Basically grows small trees in pots until they get to a certain size. It could be like a social enterprise. There's a raft of ideas, but again, we need to talk to the harbour about that, because they're probably looking again for some high kind of income tenants to come in. But we would really like this was kind of put to use for the community. But there's so many, like I said, there's so much potential down here to do things, but it's just can't get around it. Okay, I just want to point out this is Ladbrokes Boogies. Again, the Boogies has been going here for years. It is now lying empty as well, so there's potential for doing something with this space here. It's not for rent at the minute, but nothing's happening, it's just lying empty. The wet hostel across the way there, Stella Maris, the old Stella Maris, the Mission to Seamen. It's now a wet hostel where people bring in alcoholics off the street and try to give them a better quality of life. But I can tell you more about that some other time because it's starting to rain.